Football is just a game, they say, but what happens when that game becomes life itself? When 90 minutes can break hearts, heal souls, and unite the world in tears. Today we're diving into 5 moments that prove football isn't just about goals and glory. It's about the raw, unfiltered human experience that makes even the strongest men weep. Meet Son Heung-min, November 2019, the South Korean sensation who had conquered the Premier League with his infectious smile and deadly right foot. At 27, he was Tottenham's golden boy, beloved by fans across the globe, a player who wore his heart on his sleeve and never backed down from a challenge. But on a cold Sunday evening at Goodison Park, everything changed in an instant. A routine tackle, a split second, the kind of challenge Son had made 1,000 times before. But this time, Andre Gomes' ankle twisted in a way that defied nature. The sight of the injury horrified the crowd, a collective gasp silencing the stadium, and then came the tears. Not from Gomes, who was fighting for his leg, but from Son, the man who had accidentally caused it all. He dropped to his knees, his face buried in his hands, sobbing like a broken child. Even some Everton players, his opponents, paused to console him, because in that moment, football didn't matter. Only humanity did. Son couldn't continue. He was substituted, still crying, still haunted by what he'd witnessed. The referee initially showed him a yellow card, but after realizing the severity of Gomes' injury, it was upgraded to a red, though later overturned. It was an accident, but guilt doesn't care about intentions. Son later called it one of the hardest moments of his career, showing us that sometimes the person who causes the pain suffers just as much as the victim. Paul Gascoigne, 1990, Turin, Italy. Paul Gascoigne, just 23 years old, was living every English boy's dream. The midfielder from Gateshead had taken the World Cup by storm with his skill, passion, and childlike joy. Gaza, they called him, the people's player who danced through defenses and captured hearts. England hadn't reached a World Cup semi-final since 1966, 24 years earlier. The nation was dreaming, and at the center of it all was this fearless kid who played football like he was still in the playground. But then came the semi-final against West Germany, the 65th minute, a routine foul, a yellow card, and suddenly Gascoigne's world collapsed. The referee raised that piece of yellow paper, and Gascoigne knew. This was his second yellow of the tournament, meaning he'd missed the final if England advanced. The biggest game of his life, potentially within reach, and he might have to watch from the stands. The tears came instantly, not the tears of a grown man, but of a boy whose dreams were slipping away. His face crumpled, his shoulders shook, and a nation wept with him. Even his teammates looked helpless. How do you console someone whose heart is breaking in real time? Those tears became the image of a tournament, the raw emotion of a player who cared too much, who felt too deeply. Gascoigne's tears reminded us why we fall in love with football in the first place. Because it matters, because it hurts, because it's real. Davide Astori, March 4th, 2018. The 31-year-old Fiorentina captain was the heart and soul of La Viola, a defender who led by example, a father to a young daughter, a man who embodied everything noble about football. He'd spent his entire career climbing the ladder, from Serie B to Serie A, finally earning his place as captain of one of Italy's most passionate clubs. That Saturday night, Fiorentina were staying in a hotel in Udine, preparing for their match against Udinese. It was supposed to be just another game in a long season. Astori went to bed, probably thinking about tactics, about leading his team to victory. He never woke up. At around 7:30 a.m., teammates grew concerned when Astori missed breakfast. The team doctor found him unresponsive in his room. Davide Astori was gone. A sudden cardiac arrest in his sleep. No warning, no goodbye, just gone. The news spread like wildfire. Players from both teams arrived at the stadium expecting to play football. Instead, they found themselves crying in each other's arms. Grown men, hardened by years of competition, reduced to sobbing children. The match was abandoned. How could they play? How could they run on the same pitch where their captain was supposed to lead them? Fiorentina players held his jersey, number 13, and wept openly. Even Udinese players, who'd been ready to battle him for 90 minutes, stood with tears streaming down their faces. Football stopped that day, not just in Italy, but around the world, because sometimes the game reminds us of what really matters: life, love, the people we hold dear. Davide Astori's last game was the one he never played, but his legacy lives on in every tear shed for him. Christian Eriksen, June 12, 2021. The 29-year-old Danish playmaker was in the prime of his career, a magician with the ball, the creative genius who made Denmark tick. At Euro 2020, he was leading his country's golden generation, dreaming of glory on European soil. Against Finland in Copenhagen, approximately 25,000 fans had come to witness history. Their beloved number 10 was about to orchestrate another masterpiece. It was supposed to be a celebration, a carnival of Danish football. The 43rd minute, a routine throw-in. Eriksen jogged toward the ball, just as he'd done thousands of times before. And then without warning, without contact, he collapsed. Not a dive, not a foul, he just fell and didn't get up. The stadium fell silent. The crowd held their breath as medical teams rushed onto the pitch. But the most haunting image wasn't the medical equipment or the desperate attempts to save him. It was his teammates. Simon Kjær, the captain, was the first to reach Eriksen and cleared his airway before medical staff arrived. Thomas Delaney sobbed as he held Eriksen's hand. The entire Danish team formed a protective wall around their fallen friend, shielding him from the cameras while their own tears fell freely. For 13 minutes, the world stood still. Players from both teams wept openly. Finnish players, who moments before had been opponents, now prayed for their rival's life. The cameras captured grown men breaking down because football suddenly didn't matter. Only Christian mattered. And then, the miracle. A thumbs up from the stretcher. Eriksen was alive. The stadium erupted, but not in celebration, in relief, in pure, overwhelming gratitude that their hero would see another day. Lionel Messi, August 8, 2021. For 21 years, this name had been synonymous with FC Barcelona. The shy boy from Rosario who arrived at 13, needing growth hormone treatment, had become the greatest player in the club's history. 778 goals, 35 trophies, a living legend who had never known another home. But behind the scenes, Barcelona was dying. Financial crisis, 1.35 billion euros in debt. The club that had given Messi everything could no longer afford to keep him. After giving his entire life to Barcelona, they were forced to let him go. The press conference was supposed to be a formality, a simple goodbye. But when Messi stepped up to the microphone, the weight of 21 years crashed down on him. He tried to speak, tried to be professional, but the words wouldn't come. This man who had faced the biggest stages, the highest pressure, the most hostile crowds, was reduced to tears before he could even say hello. His family wept in the front row, his wife, his children, watching their father break down. Barcelona officials who had made the impossible decision could barely hold back their own tears. And around the world, millions of fans who had grown up watching Messi work his magic cried along with him. This wasn't just a transfer. This was the end of an era, a love story that had lasted 2 decades, torn apart by circumstances beyond anyone's control. Messi sobbed because he wasn't ready to leave. Barcelona wept because they weren't ready to let him go. Eduardo Bove. Back in 2024, Eduardo Bove was living his dream on loan from Roma, wearing the Fiorentina purple, playing in Serie A. It was everything he'd worked for. Still just 22, he was seen as one of Italy's brightest midfield talents. But what happened next shocked the entire football world. Fiorentina were facing Inter Milan in a packed stadium, and then, out of nowhere, both collapsed. Players, staff, even the referee were in tears. Everyone feared the worst. The silence in the stadium was deafening as medical teams rushed to save him. For Fiorentina, the pain cut even deeper because they had already lived through this once before, when they lost the video history in 2018. Now it felt like that nightmare was happening all over again. Eduardo had suffered a seizure and a brief cardiac arrest. His heart had stopped. The match was abandoned. Fans cried in the stands, even Inter Milan players. His opponents looked devastated. And then, in hospital, the miracle. Eduardo Bove woke up. Doctors said there was no major damage. Little by little, the boy began to heal. But what happened next was something no one will ever forget. A few months later, Fiorentina played Roma, and Eduardo Bove returned to the Studio Olimpico not to play, but to say thank you. As he walked onto the pitch, everyone in the stadium rose to their feet, holding a banner that read, "Stay strong, Eduardo. Keep dreaming above" was moved to tears, because in that moment, the colors of the shirt didn't matter. Eduardo above reminded us all what truly matters: life.